this is some background on the emergency rental assistance program. By the way, the acronym for emergency rental assistance program that we have been using is ERAP. So you might hear me call it ERAP throughout this presentation, and that's exactly what I'm referring to. So I do want to do some level setting before we start talking about ERAP. So, you know, it's no secret that the public health measures that enacted through COVID-19 made it really difficult for renters to earn income and pay their rent. The economic crisis caused by the pandemic and really lack of adequate relief during the lockdown has put renters at risk of eviction, and landlords with really low or no profit margins at risk of losing their properties to speculative investors, which has caused an even greater instability and threat of eviction of our communities, which already existed in the Bay Area before the pandemic. So really this rent relief program is part of an effort to stabilize both tenants and landlords who have been impacted, and ensure that those who are really vulnerable in this moment receive the support that they need. I also want to point your attention to this middle box that talks about the eviction protections in Contra Costa County. For those who don't know, renters living in Contra Costa County cannot be evicted through the end of June if you are unable to pay your rent due to COVID-19. I'm saying this because a lot of people are unaware of their rights, and it's important that we make that clear, that we make this very clear, because you know there are so many in our communities that are unaware. So just to make my message clear, if you live in Contra Costa County and are being told by your landlord that you need to leave when you've had trouble paying your rent because of COVID, we want you to please seek legal counsel and free legal assistance that we will post in just a moment, so that you just don't up and leave because your landlord said you have to. You know, this presentation is for both renters and landlords, but I'm making this point specifically for renters since I imagine a lot of folks are coming in with a lot of questions around that as well. There are a lot of rights out there for you and resources that you can tap into before assuming you need to go. So I just want to make sure that you know that. And then another point is that you do, while there are those eviction protections, I do want folks to know that there are some things that you have to do in order to receive those protections. The first is that you should send a signed declaration or a letter stating that you are unable to pay your rent due to the pandemic within 15 days of missing a payment, even if it's just missing part of the rent. There are many organizations that can assist you with submitting these declarations. We have resources on our website that we will show later. In addition to the signed declaration, you also have to pay 25% of the total amount owed between September 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2021. If you're able to do both of these things, you can send a signed declaration and pay a quarter of your total rent obligation from September to the end of June. Then the law says that you can't be evicted over unpaid rent from the pandemic period at any point in the future. So, you know, once again, if you are able to meet those two requirements to receive rent protections, you can't be evicted because of missing payment in the future. However, just a word of caution, you can be held accountable. You can be held accountable to law. So I also want to note that just as a word of warning, rental debt from the pandemic is not automatically forgiven, even if you can't be evicted for that debt by complying with what the law requests. You can be sued in order to be compelled to pay that rent, and that, according to state law, that can that can start August 21st. But we're here today to talk about how we can avoid that, right? And part of what this rental assistance program does is designed to help you meet 25% of that requirement that you need to satisfy in order to be entitled to those long-term eviction protections. Next slide. Okay, so yes, again, to avoid any of that today, we're going to discuss how you can access rental assistance so that you can get on track to paying your COVID rent-related debt and utility debt. As mentioned before, here is a list of organizations that you can contact for free legal assistance if you suspect that your tenant protections under current law are being violated. There's really no wrong door to knock on with these folks. If you call any of these organizations, they will lead you to the right resources. We recommend contacting the Eviction Defense Center in particular for Contra Costa County, but there are these other ones. And the phone number for Eviction Defense Center, for those that may be on the phone, 510-452-4541. There's Bay Area Legal Aid, 800-551-5554. Centro Legal de la Raza, 510-437-1554. And lastly, the East Bay Community Law Center, 510-548-4040. And again, these are organizations that have been well-resourced to deal with the situation happening in this moment. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about the reason that folks are here today, which is more information about the rent relief program. So how does ERAP work in Contra Costa County? First, I want to note that due to the confusing nature in which the federal government distributed $2.6 billion to California, that is the amount of money that the California received through federal payment, through a federal relief package in December to establish this program. However, the rules for allocating that were really confusing. So what basically happened was the state gave cities and counties with populations over 200,000 the option of either creating their own local rent relief program with local rules, or going with the state's program and abiding by state rules, or some areas were given the combination of both. In Contra Costa County, Contra Costa County decided to stick with the state's program. And so just to make that clear, we go by the state's portal and the state's rules. So this requires Contra Costa renters and landlords to apply through an online state portal called Housing is Key. We'll get to that in a couple of slides. But the state portal can be found, and a lot of information about ERAP can also be found at housingiskey.com. And this is specifically for Contra Costa County residents. As I mentioned before, ERAP is a national program, and it's designed. It's this national program. It was administered by the federal government. There's states all over the country that have their own ERAP program. And one of the things that to know about ERAP is that it's designed to help low-income renters and landlords with their unpaid rent, and that the federal guidelines for rent relief essentially say that the federal guidelines for rent relief state that in order to qualify, you have to kind of meet these three buckets, which is you must be low income, and there'll be a slide right now to talking about this, but just so that you know who you need to be to qualify just for the national guidelines, is you have to be a low income person impacted by COVID-19 and at risk of housing instability or homelessness. The program is also open to everyone, and the state, neither the state or the federal government will ask about your immigration status. Your application will not depend on your immigration status, and no information will be shared with immigration authorities. Next slide. Okay. So once again, here are the three buckets that you essentially have to fall into to qualify for the ERAP program. Again, being a low-income renter or a landlord, having that demonstrated loss of income or incurred expenses. It's also for people who can demonstrate that they are at risk of housing instability, which in a moment we'll talk about the different documents that can prove that, but think like an eviction notice, or even some kind of written notice from your landlord that they're thinking about, evicting or moving forward with something like that. And lastly, if your household can also demonstrate that they are, financially struggling. So those are really the main three buckets, and they're a little repetitive. I'm sorry, this program has also been interesting to kind of navigate it, and we'll get more into that in a second, but you can move on, Diana. Thank you. Okay, so in Contra Costa County, you are eligible to apply to ERAP if, you can go to the one before. That one. Oh, oh, that's weird. Slide 8. Okay, there you go. So yeah, in Contra Costa County, you're eligible to apply to ERAP if you make less than 80% of area median income, also known as AMI. However, you will receive priority in processing your application if you make less than 50% of AMI, or if you live in a community that has been hit hard by COVID-19. So to make this very clear, rent relief from ERAP is not being provided on a first come, first served basis. It's being provided on a needs-based basis. Next slide. Okay, and so this is the chart that is used in Contra Costa County that determines a household's area median income, this term that I just referred to, where you need to fall in order to determine if you qualify. So what you can do if you're trying to get a sense if you qualify is you can go across the top line and say how many people live in your household. Then look down that column to figure out where you fit in terms of your annual household income. So for example, if I have 4 people in your household and your annual income is $50,000, you would fit between 30 to 50% AMI right there. Therefore, you are below 50 area percent median income, and you will be prioritized for having your ERAP application process. For tenants, I encourage you to, figure out where you are in this chart to be sure that you are at least under that 80% mark for your household and therefore eligible to apply for ERAP in Contra Costa County. And again, folks, if you have questions about any of this, please put it in the chat so that Valeska can take note of it and we can bring it into the question and answer section. Next slide. Okay, so if you go through all this and you determine that yes, you are an eligible tenant and that you are below and that you're income qualified to apply for ERAP in Contra Costa, what happens is the way the program works is that the state will pay 80% of your back rent accrued since April 1st, 2020. And in exchange, your landlord must forgive the remaining 20%. So that is the agreement. It is not a full rent debt payment program. They guarantee 80% with an agreement from your landlord to waive the other 20%. And the state can also pay through this program 100% of back utilities, and eligible renters who go through the program and qualify may qualify to receive future rent assistance equal to 25% of their monthly rent. I'm unsure how long future rent payments will be paid. I think at this point, it depends on the fund and how much it stays replenished. But at the moment, this is how the program works. I also want to note that I know that there has been news, there has been notifications and news about the governor considering changes to the current program. I just got off the phone with a landlord today who mentioned like, oh, well, isn't he paying 100% or something? Now, this, as of right now, those of us who are doing outreach for the program, we have not gotten word of any changes to the program, and I'm not sure how the governor is going to implement those changes. So right now we are working with the resource that we have, which is this current structure, but that doesn't mean that it won't change. As you all know, things have been changing very quickly in this environment. And so I just want to make a note that as of today, this is the most up-to-date information about the program that we have. Next slide. Great. So just to go through this little exercise to kind of, to visualize it, if you are an income qualified to apply an ERAP and you went through all of that, to visualize this, let's say that a tenant has missed rent in the amount of $2,000 for 5 months for a total debt of $10,000. If they qualify and their application is approved by the state, an application then gets sent to the landlord. If the landlord accepts, the state will then pay the 80% of the debt, or in this case, $8,000, directly to the landlord. In exchange, the landlord forgives 20% or $2,000 of the debt. And in the end, the tenant is no longer in debt. This is the ideal situation for how ERAP would work, right? However, we are aware that there are situations where landlords do not want to participate. And that's actually been happening a lot because the 80-20 is not satisfying many folks. And that's why there's, pressure to increase that amount. But let's say you find yourself in a situation where you go through the ERAP process, application process, and you find out that your landlord does not want to participate. In the event that you apply and they don't participate, you can still receive a payment equal to 25% of your back rent, which will be paid directly to you and that you can use to pay your landlord. And if this happens and you receive that 25%, and you receive that, and just make sure that you specify in writing that the payment you're giving them is meant to cover rent missed since September 1st, 2020. This will help to ensure that you qualify for long-term eviction under state law, SB 91. And again, tenants whose landlords opt out of the program, this will be a tricky situation, and want to make sure that you're also seeking that free legal advice that we encouraged, to call one of those resources to understand that you are going through this process, right? And to make them aware of your case. Next slide. This is just a note around just how the future rent and utility assistance, we know that some people are on the call interested in that. When you go through the portal, there will be an area where you fill out the information for how much you owe for utility assistance. And there is, as of now, this information, I want to honestly say that there has been back and forth around how much future rent will be paid. So when we send out this recording, I will try to also send the most up-to-date information on how the future rent works, because that has been a point of confusion even for us. But just wanted to share this slide because this was what we received this was the information we have now, but we've been hearing about some changes. Next slide. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about the program, how it works, I want to talk about what you need to get, what you need to prepare in order to get ready to apply. You essentially need to provide proof of a number of things. And there's these 4 sort of buckets that you really need to hit and provide documentation or paper trail of. Of course, your identity, which also have identity and proof of residence. Those are just general identification things that are needed. The financial hardship, right?
Excuse me, Mia.
Yes?
I'm sorry. This is Oscar, the interpreter speaking.
Yes.
When you say proof of residency, what you mean is proof that you live in that place, not an immigration situation, right?
Yes, thank you for asking.
Thank you.
That.
I'm
yes,
sorry, I needed to understand. Thank you.
Of course, proof of the address, essentially, of where you live, a bill, something like that, that just says that you live in this location so that they can tie you to the county that you are coming out of. So again, proof of identification, that proof of residence, the proof of loss of income or significant costs incurred, during COVID. So, right, so some people didn't lose their jobs or didn't lose income, but they had to incur lots and lots of costs. So you can also prove that as well. And then the final 2 are proof of residency, which ties to the amount of rent owed. So you do need to have that number, and proof of proof of your current income. I see your hand. If I'm almost going to be done, but if you want to save your question in 5 minutes, we're going to go into questions and answers.
Okay,
it's okay. I will wait.
Thank you so much. And then one thing to just note about, and I'll go into the Spanish version of the documents while I share this other. Oh. Can you go to the next slide, Diana? Perfect. That's just the same slide in Spanish. But I also just want to note that if you receive public assistance, you can streamline this process by providing proof of participation in Medi-Cal, CalFresh, and other programs, which will prove that you are, will prove your income need. It proves other things such as your identity and residency. And so that is a way. So if you're not able in the end to provide documentations for these areas, there is an option for you to this is an option for you to go through. And in the end, if you are unable to provide any documentation around these areas, you can still apply. There is an option for you to fill out a form that states, I have suffered a financial setback due to COVID-19. I am signing this under penalty of perjury, which is that legal term, and attesting to the fact that I have suffered financial hardship. Lastly, if you need any support with identifying the proper documents to hit these areas, we are here to support in English and in Spanish. And you can go to the next slide, Diana. Oh, so this is actually just an example of just the kind of situation or documents that you can prepare for applying. I'm going to move us along since I do want to get us to questions, but as you can see, there's different examples such as a past due utility bill or an eviction notice or an unemployment benefit. Those are the kind of documents that would help you provide this proof. Next slide. And so how do you apply? How can you get ready to apply? So, we do have a tenant checklist on our website. In a moment, we will show you our ERAP part on our website. So you want to review that to make sure you have all your documents ready and you've done all of that, and that you are eligible for the program. Then you're going to get your paperwork ready. So that includes, taking pictures, scanning all the documents that you need to submit into the online portal. If you are someone that feels that you have a delicate situation and you need a little extra support identifying that paper trail, you can get support from our outreach coordinator, Valeska. You will see her in a moment, and she will, you can contact her at this email, erap@richmondland.com. Valeska, you could also put your phone number in the chat so that people have your information. And then lastly, you will submit, and then Valeska will set you up so that if you need additional support, you can go through a counselor, an ERAP counselor who submits the application for you. And so that is that is the process, but you are also welcome to do it on your own. Can you select next slide, please? You can do it on your own. This is where you would apply. Again, Contra Costa County is going through the state program, and the state portal is here at state program. And this is the state program's website at housingiskey.com. And next slide. If you already know that you want to talk to us more to support you in getting ready for your application, this is a link. This is an image of our website where you can go and fill out a tenant intake form. Once you fill out the tenant intake form, that will let Valeska know to contact you at the time that you stay in the form. And this will be an option to let us know if you prefer phone or virtual or in person, if you know what your needs are, and Valeska can contact you to set up an appointment. Next slide. Okay, and so this reaches the end of the presentation, but once again, these are our links for Richmond Land's website. We've been sharing a lot of different information in English and in Spanish about the program, the upcoming webinars, hopefully some in-person events where people can drop in. But if you want to stay in touch with us and all the information that we have going on, please contact us here. And once again, my name is Mia Carvajal. And now we can go into questions and answers.